The sun was setting over the vast expanse of dusty plains, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. A solitary rancher named Caleb rode his weary horse toward his homestead, the sound of hooves crunching against dry earth echoing in the stillness. His face was lined with worry, his eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something or someone that might never return. Caleb's ranch sat at the edge of a desolate stretch of land where tumbleweeds rolled freely and cactus plants stood like silent sentinels. It was a place of beauty and danger, where the golden hues of day gave way to starry nights so bright they could almost light your path, if you dared venture out after dark. As he approached the well near his house, an eerie sound caught his attention. At first, it was faint, barely distinguishable from the wind whistling through the cracks in the wooden fence. But then, as he dismounted and strained his ears, the noise grew clearer, a soft, mournful cry. It came from the well. His heart raced as he leaned closer, peering into the black abyss below. "Hello," he called out, his voice trembling slightly. The echoes returned his words, but no response came from within. He tried again, louder this time. "Is anybody down there?" A moment passed before the cries resumed, weaker now but unmistakably human. They were muffled, as though whoever, or whatever, was down there struggled to make themselves heard. Without hesitation, Caleb grabbed a lantern and prepared to descend into the depths of the well. Little did he know that what awaited him would unravel mysteries far greater than any he had ever imagined. The ladder creaked under his weight as he descended step by step, the air growing colder and heavier with each movement. The dim light of the lantern revealed damp stone walls covered in moss, their surfaces glistening with moisture. When he reached the bottom, the source of the cry became apparent. A small figure huddled against the wall, shivering violently. It was a girl, no older than 12, her clothes torn and muddy, her face streaked with tears. "Are you all right?" Caleb asked gently, kneeling beside her. She flinched at his touch, pulling away instinctively. Her wide, frightened eyes darted around the confined space, taking in every detail of her surroundings and him. I don't know," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been here for days." Caleb frowned, confusion clouding his features. "Days? How did you end up here?" She hesitated, clutching something tightly in her hand. It wasn't until she opened her palm that Caleb saw it. A gold coin, glinting even in the dim light of the lantern. Its surface bore intricate engravings, symbols unfamiliar to him yet undeniably ancient. The sight of it made his breath catch in his throat. "What is this?" he asked, pointing to the coin. Her lips quivered. "It's mine. Please, don't take it." Caleb nodded slowly, raising his hands in reassurance. "I won't. But tell me, how did you come to have it?" The girl looked down, her gaze fixed on the coin as if it held answers to questions only she understood. "I found it," she began, her voice hesitant. "In the woods, near the river." Curiosity burned within Caleb, but he forced himself to remain calm. "The woods? What were you doing there?" She shrugged, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I ran away. My pa, he drinks too much. And when he does—" Her voice trailed off, leaving unsaid horrors hanging in the air between them. Caleb felt a surge of anger mixed with pity. He knew all too well the struggles faced by families in these harsh lands, where survival often depended on strength rather than kindness. Gently, he helped her climb back up the ladder, carrying the lantern to guide their ascent. Once they emerged into the cool evening air, he wrapped her in a blanket and led her inside his cabin. Inside, the warmth of crackling fire greeted them, its orange glow casting dancing shadows across the walls. Caleb brewed some tea while the girl sat silently, clutching the blanket around her like a shield. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly, their light reflecting off the nearby stream that wound lazily through the property. It was a peaceful scene, but one marred by the lingering mystery of the gold coin. As the night wore on, Caleb pressed her for more details about the coin and its origins. Reluctantly, she recounted her journey into the forest, describing a clearing bathed in moonlight where strange markings adorned the trees. There, beneath a fallen log, she claimed to have unearthed the coin buried among other artifacts. Fragments of pottery, rusted tools, and bones that told tales of lives long forgotten. But then she added something followed her home. Shadows that move when they shouldn't. Whispers carried on the wind. Footsteps that echoed even when she stood perfectly still. Caleb listened intently, his expression shifting from skepticism to genuine concern. Whatever forces had brought her to his well seemed intent on keeping her there, determined to uncover the truth. Caleb set out early the next morning, following the vague directions the girl had provided. The journey took him deep into the wilderness, past groves of towering pines and along the banks of babbling brooks. Eventually, he arrived at the clearing she described, its atmosphere heavy with an unspoken tension. The markings she spoke of were indeed etched into the bark of several trees, their meanings lost to time. Digging where she indicated, Caleb uncovered not just the remnants of another era, but also evidence of tragedy. Among the relics lay skeletal remains, their positions suggesting violence rather than natural death. Who these people were and why they met such a fate remained a puzzle waiting to be solved. Yet, as he examined the artifacts, one thing became increasingly clear. The coin the girl possessed was not merely a relic. It was a key to what, however, remained uncertain. Back at the ranch, tensions mounted as strange occurrences plagued the area. Cattle wandered off without explanation. Tools disappeared overnight, only to reappear miles away. And always, there was a feeling of being watched, invisible eyes tracking every move. The girl grew quieter, her fear palpable, while Caleb wrestled with doubts and fears of his own. One fateful evening, as thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, the answer finally revealed itself. While examining the coin under candlelight, Caleb noticed something he hadn't before, a series of tiny inscriptions spiraling outward from its center. With painstaking effort, he translated them, revealing a message both cryptic and chilling. Asterisk, beneath the waters lies a treasure untold, guarded by those who pay the ultimate toll. Asterisk, realization dawned upon him as pieces clicked together. The clearing, the artifacts, the skeletal remains, all pointed to a hidden cache buried somewhere nearby. But the phrase, guarded by those who pay the ultimate toll, filled him with dread. Guards implied protection, yes, but also vengeance. Spirits bound to protect what they once sought to claim. Refusing to let fear dictate his actions, Caleb devised a plan. Armed with supplies and determination, he returned to the clearing, determined to uncover the truth buried alongside the treasure. As he worked, rain began to fall, transforming the ground into slick mud and making his task infinitely harder. Lightning illuminated the sky, casting fleeting glimpses of shapes moving just beyond the tree line. By dawn he struck Patered, or rather, something far more valuable. Beneath layers of earth and rock lay a chest, its metal surface corroded but still intact. Inside, gold coins gleamed dully, their number staggering. Jewelry, weapons, and documents attesting to the wealth and power of those who had once called this place home rested alongside them. But among the treasures was a journal, its pages yellow with age yet legible enough to reveal secrets long buried. Reading its contents, Caleb learned of a band of prospectors who had stumbled upon the site decades earlier. Greed consumed them, leading to betrayal and murder, as each man fought to secure the lion's share of the riches. In their final moments, they cursed the very treasure that had destroyed them, vowing eternal guardianship over it. Thus, their spirits lingered, trapped between worlds, seeking retribution against anyone foolish enough to disturb their resting place. Armed with this knowledge, Caleb confronted the girl, explaining everything. Though terrified, she agreed to help him perform a ritual detailed in the journal, one designed to appease the restless souls and free them from their torment. Together, they gathered necessary items, venturing back to the clearing under cover of darkness. The ceremony was harrowing, requiring precise incantations and offerings. Mistakes meant dire consequences, and more than once, Caleb feared they wouldn't survive. But perseverance paid off, and as the final words left his lips, a profound silence settled over the clearing. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of peace. When it was over, the girl handed him the coin, her expression serene. "Take it," she said simply. "It belongs with the others now." Reluctantly, Caleb accepted it, placing it carefully inside the chest before sealing it shut. Then, together, They buried the treasure once more, ensuring it would remain undisturbed for generations to come. As they walked away, hand in hand, neither spoke, content to let the quiet speak for itself. Months later, life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be in the Wild West. The girl stayed with Caleb, finding solace in his care and guidance. Rumors spread of the haunted clearing, deterring curious souls from venturing too close. And though the exact nature of the treasure remained unknown to most, one thing was certain. Some mysteries are best left unsolved. For now, at least, the desert winds carried whispers of another kind. Stories of courage, redemption, and the enduring bond between two unlikely companions united by fate. Until, perhaps, destiny called again. The days that followed were quiet, almost unnaturally so. The ranch seemed to breathe easier, as if the weight of unseen forces had been lifted from its shoulders. Caleb worked tirelessly, tending to his crops and livestock with renewed vigor. The girl, whose name he learned was Clara, proved to be a quick learner, helping around the ranch whenever she could. Her laughter, once muffled by fear, now rang out like music across the open plains. But beneath the surface, an unease lingered, a shadow cast by unanswered questions. Caleb often found himself staring at the horizon during sunset, his mind drifting back to the clearing and the journal's cryptic warnings. One phrase in particular haunted him. Asterisk, though freed, they may yet seek vengeance upon those who disturb their rest. Asterisk, he dismissed it as paranoia, telling himself that the ritual had succeeded. Yet deep down, a part of him wondered if they had truly escaped unscathed. One evening, as Caleb sat on the porch sharpening his knife, Claire approached with a curious expression. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Caleb paused, looking into her wide, innocent eyes. "We gave them peace," he replied firmly. "That was the right thing to do." Clara nodded, but didn't seem entirely convinced. She glanced toward the woods, where the faintest whisper of wind stirred the leaves. I feel like there's still something watching us." Her words sent a chill down Caleb's spine. He stood abruptly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "There's nothing out there but the wind and the wild," he said, though his tone lacked the conviction he wished for. That night, under the cover of darkness, strange things began to happen. Shadows moved where no one should have been. Footsteps echoed outside the cabin walls, growing louder before fading into silence. Caleb lit lanterns throughout the house, their golden glow providing little comfort against the creeping dread. Clara clung to him, her small frame trembling despite his attempts to soothe her fears. By morning, the disturbances ceased, leaving behind only a single clue, a trail of footprints leading away from a ranch. They were unlike any animal tracks Caleb had ever seen, too large and irregular to belong to anything natural. Following the prints took him far beyond the boundaries of his property, deeper into the wilderness than he'd ventured since uncovering the treasure. The path led him to a secluded glen surrounded by ancient oaks, their gnarled branches twisting skyward like skeletal fingers. At the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, its surface etched with symbols identical to those on the coin and within the journal. Upon closer inspection, Caleb discovered a cavity carved into the top of the pedestal, perfectly shaped to hold the gold coin. Realization struck him like a thunderclap. The ritual hadn't ended the curse. It had merely delayed it. The spirits, bound to the treasure, sought not only to guard it, but also to reclaim what they believed rightfully belonged to them. And now, with the coin in Caleb's possession, they saw him as both intruder and keeper. Panicked, Caleb raced back to the ranch, determined to confront the truth head-on. Clara awaited him anxiously, her face pale with worry. "They're coming!" he blurted out, breathless from the run. "We need to prepare." Prepare for what neither of them knew exactly. But they fortified the cabin nonetheless, boarding up windows and reinforcing doors. Inside, they gathered supplies, lanterns, matches, even weapons, though Caleb doubted bullets would suffice against spectral foes. As night fell, the atmosphere grew thick with tension, each creak of the floorboard sending Clara darting toward Caleb's side. It started with whispers, soft at first, but growing louder until they filled the room. Clara covered her ears, tears streaming down her cheeks. Caleb held her tightly, murmuring reassurances even as his own resolve wavered. Then came the knocking, loud, insistent thuds against the walls and roof, as though invisible hands pounded relentlessly upon the structure. And then silence. For a moment, nothing moved or sounded. It was as if the world itself held its breath. Clara peeked through her fingers, her sobs subsiding into shaky gasps. Caleb reached for the lantern, its flickering flame casting eerie shadows across the room. Before he could speak, however, a figure materialized before them. A man, translucent and gaunt, his hollow eyes burning with fury. "You stole our treasure," the ghost intoned, his voice gravelly and distorted. "You must pay." Caleb stepped forward, shielding Clara with his body. "I returned it. I buried it where it belongs." The spirit sneered, his form rippling like smoke caught in a draft. "Not all of it. The coin remains with you." Clara whimpered, clutching the blanket tighter. Caleb clenched his jaw, knowing the inevitable decision loomed before him. Reluctantly, he retrieved the coin from his pocket, holding it aloft. "Take it," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Just leave us alone." The ghost extended a bony hand, reaching for the coin, but as Caleb prepared to relinquish it, another voice interrupted. "No." Both Caleb and the spirit turned to see Clara standing defiantly, her small frame trembling, but her determination unwavering. "If this is their treasure," she declared, pointing at the ghost, "then it should stay buried. Forever. You can't keep haunting people because of greed." Her boldness stunned everyone, even herself. The ghost hesitated, his ethereal form flickering uncertainly. For a long moment, silence reigned supreme. Then, with a mournful sigh, the spirit dissipated into thin air, taking the oppressive atmosphere with him. Exhausted but relieved, Caleb embraced Clara tightly, vowing never to underestimate her courage again. Together, they vowed to ensure the treasure and its cursed legacy remained undisturbed, buried deep beneath layers of earth and forgotten time. Yet as they drifted off to sleep that night, neither noticed a faint glimmer of light emanating from the pedestal miles away, nor the faint echo of laughter carried on the wind, a laughter that promised future encounters between the living and the restless dead. The days that followed were a blur of tension and uncertainty. Though the immediate threat seemed to have passed, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. The coin now rested safely in the chest where it belonged, buried deep beneath the earth, but the memory of the ghostly encounter lingered like an unspoken shadow over the ranch. Clara adjusted to her new life with surprising resilience. She spent her mornings helping Caleb tend to the animals, learning how to milk cows and collect eggs with a determination that belied her young age. In the afternoons, she explored the surrounding land, always staying close enough to hear Caleb's call should danger arise. Yet, despite her outward confidence, there were moments when Caleb caught her staring into the distance, her brow furrowed as though lost in thought. One afternoon, while Clara wandered near the stream, she stumbled upon something unusual, a cluster of strange rocks arranged in a circle, partially hidden by moss and leaves. Their surfaces bore markings similar to those she had seen in the clearing where the treasure had been found. Her heart raced as she knelt to examine them more closely. Could this be another clue? Another piece of the puzzle they hadn't yet uncovered? Caleb joined her shortly thereafter, his boots crunching against the gravel as he approached. "What have you found?" he asked, his voice tinged with caution. Clara pointed to the rocks, her excitement tempered by apprehension. "Look at these symbols," she said. "They're just like the ones on the coin and in the journal." Caleb crouched beside her, studying the engravings intently. His jaw tightened as he recognized their significance. "This wasn't put here by chance," he muttered. "It's connected to everything else." Together, they cleared away the debris covering the stones, revealing more intricate carvings beneath. Among them was a depiction of a sun rising over mountains, flanked by what appeared to be two figures holding hands. Beneath the image was a series of numbers etched into the stone, coordinates, perhaps pointing to another location. "Do you think it leads somewhere?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Caleb admitted, "but we can't ignore it. If this is part of the same story, we need to find out what it means." That night, under the cover of darkness, Caleb retrieved his maps and began piecing together the clues. The coordinates matched a spot several miles east of the ranch, near the base of the Red Rock Cliffs. It was a place he had avoided for years, not because of superstition, but because of its treacherous terrain. Steep cliffs loomed high above jagged rocks, and the path leading up to them was narrow and perilous. The next morning, armed with supplies and lanterns, Caleb and Clara set out toward the cliffs. The journey took them through dense forests and across rushing streams, testing both their endurance and resolve. As they climbed higher, the air grew cooler, carrying with it the scent of pine and damp earth. Birds chirped melodiously overhead, their songs providing a fleeting sense of normalcy amidst the growing unease. When they finally reached the designated spot, they found themselves standing before a massive cave entrance, its mouth yawning wide like the jaws of some ancient beast. Vines hung down in thick curtains, obscuring much of the interior. Beyond lay darkness so absolute it seemed almost alive, pulsating with secrets waiting to be revealed. Caleb hesitated, glancing back at Clara. "We don't have to go in," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "If you're scared, we can turn back." Clara shook her head resolutely. "No, we've come too far to stop now." With a nod, Caleb lit the lantern and stepped inside, Clara following close behind. The air inside the cave was heavy, laden with moisture that clung to their skin. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like frozen daggers, their surfaces glistening faintly in the lantern's glow. Every step echoed ominously, reverberating off the walls and amplifying the oppressive silence. Deeper within, they discovered carvings identical to those they had seen outside, symbols, images, and cryptic messages scrawled into the rock face. One particular carving caught Caleb's attention, a map-like diagram showing various locations connected by lines that formed a complex web. At its center was a symbol resembling the gold coin, surrounded by smaller icons representing other artifacts. "What do you think this means?" Clara whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "It looks like a network," Caleb replied, his voice equally hushed. "These places are all linked somehow. Maybe they were once part of a larger system or civilization." Before either could speculate further, a low growl echoed through the cave, sending shivers down their spines. Shadows moved along the walls, cast by unseen forces lurking in the darkness. Clara grabbed Caleb's arm, her grip tight with fear. "Stay close," Caleb warned, raising the lantern higher. As they ventured deeper, the source of sound became apparent. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form shifting between human and something decidedly less so. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the lantern's light like twin embers. Despite its unsettling appearance, the creature did not attack. Instead, it spoke, its voice echoing eerily throughout the cavern. "You seek knowledge," it rasped, its words slurred yet intelligible. "But beware, the truth comes at cost." Caleb swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet the creature's gaze. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I am a guardian," it replied, stepping closer. "Of truths long buried, of treasures untold, and of curses unbroken." Clara gasped, clutching Caleb's sleeve. "Is it one of them?" she murmured. Caleb nodded slightly, his mind racing. "What do you want?" he asked the creature. "To warn you," it answered simply. "The cycle cannot be stopped. What has begun will end only when balance is restored." Before either could press for more information, the creature dissolved into mist, leaving behind only the lingering scent of sulfur and ash. Caleb and Clara exchanged uneasy glances, neither daring to voice the thoughts swirling in their minds. Retreating from the cave proved even more challenging than entering. The path seemed narrower, the air thicker, as if the very walls conspired against them. When they finally emerged into daylight, they collapsed onto the rocky ground, their hearts pounding in unison. Back at the ranch, the weight of their discoveries pressed heavily upon them. The coin, the journal, the carvings, and now the guardian, all pointed to a grander narrative, one that spanned centuries and perhaps even lifetimes. Caleb knew they had merely scratched the surface of a mystery far greater than anything they could have imagined. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Caleb and Clara sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. Neither spoke, content to let the quiet envelop them. For now, The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain. Their journey was far from over. Little did they know. The next chapter would reveal truths neither was prepared to face. The days that followed were spent in a mixture of anticipation and dread. Caleb and Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they had only begun to unravel the threads of a much larger tapestry, one woven with secrets older than their wildest imaginations. The Guardian's cryptic warning echoed in Caleb's mind like an unrelenting drumbeat. Asterisk, what has begun will end only when balance is restored. Asterisk, but what did it mean? And how could they possibly restore something so ancient, so vast? Clara, for her part, seemed equally preoccupied but determined. She spent hours poring over the journal, tracing its faded ink with her fingertips as though hoping to absorb some hidden wisdom through touch alone. Caleb, meanwhile, delved deeper into his maps, searching for connections between the locations mentioned in the carvings and any landmarks he might recognize. Together, they pieced together fragments of a story that spanned generations, perhaps even centuries. Their efforts led them to a startling realization. The symbols carved into the rocks, the ones on the coin, and those depicted in the journal, all pointed to a network of sacred sites scattered across the region. These weren't just random places. They were nodes of a system designed to maintain a fragile equilibrium, a balance between the natural world and forces beyond comprehension. And somewhere within this system lay the key to breaking the curse that had haunted them since the moment Clara appeared at the well. But finding these sites would require more than determination. It would demand courage, resourcefulness, and perhaps a little luck. Caleb knew they couldn't tackle this challenge alone. They needed help. Someone familiar with the land, someone who understood the ways of the old world. That evening, under the light of a full moon, Caleb saddled his horse and rode into town. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional drunken laughter spilling out from saloons. He dismounted outside the general store, tying his reins to a post before stepping inside. The air smelled of coffee beans and leather, and the shopkeeper, an elderly man named Mr. Harper, looked up from behind the counter. "Evening, Caleb," Harper greeted, wiping his hands on a rag. "What brings you here so late?" "I need information," Caleb replied, keeping his voice low. "About the old ruins, the ones no one talks about." Harper's weathered face darkened slightly. "You don't want to get mixed up in that business, boy. Some things are better left buried." Caleb leaned closer, his tone urgent. "I already am mixed up in it. Someone knows something. Harper, someone always does." Reluctantly, Harper gestured toward the back room, where they could speak privately. Once seated, he pulled out a dusty tome, its cover embossed with strange runes. "This belonged to my grandfather," he explained. "He was a prospector, but he wasn't looking for gold. He sought knowledge about the people who came before us." As Harper flipped through the pages, Caleb saw illustrations of symbols identical to those they had encountered. There were descriptions of rituals, warnings of curses, and accounts of encounters with beings that defied explanation. One passage, in particular, caught Caleb's eye. Asterisk, in times of great imbalance, the keeper shall rise to restore harmony. To do so, they must awaken the nodes and reunite the fragments. Asterisk, the keeper? Caleb asked, frowning. Harper nodded gravely. It's said to be a person chosen by fate, a bridge between worlds. If what you're dealing with involves these symbols, then maybe you or your young friend is the keeper. Caleb stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or panic. Me? Or Clara? That's a lot to take in. It's also a lot to ignore, Harper countered. If you're serious about stopping whatever's after you, you'll need guidance. There's a woman out near Black Rock Canyon, Eleanor Mayfield. She's a healer, but she knows more than she lets on. Ask her about the nodes. She might point you in the right direction. With the book tucked under his arm and Harper's advice ringing in his ears, Caleb returned to the ranch just as dawn broke over the horizon. Clara was waiting for him, her expression hopeful yet wary. "Did you find anything?" she asked, helping him unsaddle the horse. "I think we might have," Caleb replied, handing her the journal and pointing to the passage about the keeper. "And there's someone we need to see." Without delay, they packed supplies and set off toward Black Rock Canyon. The journey took them through rugged terrain, past canyons carved deep by rivers long gone, and beneath skies so vast they felt infinitesimally small. Along the way, Clara shared insights gleaned from the journal, connecting dots Caleb hadn't noticed. By the time they reached Eleanor Mayfield's cabin, nestled among towering pines, both were exhausted but resolute. Eleanor greeted them with a knowing smile, as though expecting their arrival. Her home was filled with a scent of herbs and incense, shelves lined with jars containing powders and tinctures. She listened intently as Caleb recounted their experiences, her sharp eyes never leaving their faces. "You've been chosen," she said finally, her voice soft but carrying the weight of certainty. "Both of you. The keeper isn't just one person. It's a partnership, a balance itself. You, Caleb, represent strength and resolve. Clara embodies intuition and purity of spirit. Together, you form the whole. But what about the nodes?" Clara pressed, eager for answers. Eleanor retrieved a map, marking several locations with careful precision. "These are the nodes, the sacred sites tied to fragments. Each fragment holds a piece of the truth, a fragment of power. To restore balance, you must awaken each node and reclaim the fragments. Only then can the curse be lifted." Caleb frowned. "And if we fail, then the imbalance grows stronger," Eleanor warned, "until it consumes everything." Determined not to let fear dictate their actions, Caleb and Clara embarked on their quest. Their first destination was Whispering Pines Grove, a forest shrouded in perpetual mist. According to Eleanor's map, it housed the node of origins, a place believed to hold the very first fragment. Upon arrival, they found themselves surrounded by towering trees whose trunks spiraled upward like staircases to the heavens. The air was thick with moisture, and every sound seemed amplified. Leaves rustling, branches creaking, whispers carried on the wind. Deep within the grove stood a stone altar, its surface engraved with intricate patterns matching those on the coin. As Caleb approached, the ground trembled faintly, and a figure materialized before him, an ethereal being cloaked in shimmering light. Its voice resonated like distant thunder. "To claim the fragment, you must prove worthy," it declared. "Answer this. What binds all things together?" Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Balance." The figure inclined its head, seemingly satisfied. With a wave of its hand, the altar split open, revealing a glowing shard suspended within. As Caleb reached for it, the world around them shifted. Colors intensified, sound became clearer, and profound sense of connection washed over them. They repeated this process at each node, facing trials that tested their courage, trust, and understanding. At the Cavern of Echoes, they navigated a labyrinth while answering riddles whispered by unseen voices. In the Valley of Shadows, they confronted illusions crafted to exploit their deepest fears. Each success brought them closer to uncovering the truth behind the curse, and their roles in ending it. Finally, they arrived at the final node, located atop a mountain peak overlooking the entire region. Here, the ultimate trial awaited. A massive stone door guarded the entrance, inscribed with words written in fire. Asterisk, only the united heart may enter. Two halves make one whole. Asterisk, Caleb and Clara exchanged glances, their bond stronger now than ever before. Together, they placed their hands on the door, channeling their combined strength and purpose. Slowly, it began to open, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. At its center rested the final fragment, a sphere pulsating with energy, surrounded by artifacts representing the other fragments they had collected. As they approached, a figure emerged from the shadows, a spectral woman dressed in flowing robes, her presence commanding yet sorrowful. "You have done well," she said, her voice tinged with regret. "But know this, the curse was never meant to harm others. It was a shield protecting the truth until the keeper rose." "What truth?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. "The truth of unity," the woman replied. "This land was once governed by harmony, a balance maintained by those who understood their connection to the earth and each other. When greed and division shattered that harmony, the curse was enacted to preserve the knowledge needed to restore it." Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she realized the enormity of their task. "So, it's not just about lifting the curse. It's about bringing people back together. The woman nodded solemnly. Yes, the nodes are not merely relics. They are reminders of what we once were and what we could become again. With heavy hearts but unwavering resolve, Caleb and Clara reunited the fragments, merging them into a single artifact that pulsed with life. As they held it aloft, the curse dissipated, its remnants dissolving into the wind. For the first time in generations, true peace settled over the land. Yet even as they celebrated their victory, Caleb and Clara understood their work was far from finished. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, requiring them to share their newfound knowledge with others. But they faced it together, bound by a bond forged in fire and tempered by trials. And so, beneath the endless sky of the Wild West, two unlikely heroes stood ready to forge a brighter future. One built on balance, unity, and hope, until, perhaps, destiny called again.